I'm Pearle Saprid, and I'm the youngest daughter of Solomon Saprid. And in today's episode of the Cultural Cache Online, I will be talking about his work titled Penitensiya, a sculpture he made in 1982 from the Cultural Center of the Philippines' 21st Century Art Museum collection. During this time, I was still in high school, and although I was preoccupied with my own teenage interest, I remember my father working on this sculpture. Our father's working studio and personal gallery was at the ground floor of our house, and I would be seeing the Penitensiya on a huge table-like platform which occupied a quarter of his gallery. The setup at the home gallery gave viewers ample space to move around the table and admire the Penitensiya from different angles. On a platform, the sculpture's form and structure stood tall and imposing. I recall admiring its composition. Though the viewer doesn't see its facial expressions, one can feel the intensity of its emotions through the movement of its body and by the way it was structured. Penitensiya is solid and heavy, and is made from welded steel, but looking at it from different angles show a certain fluidity. He was known as the master of frozen motion, as his graceful sculptures are expressive despite the rigidness of wood or metal which he often used. As with his other sculptures, Penitensiya was designed far from the conventions of balance and form, thus doesn't require any external devices to stand on its own. Our father loved to challenge himself and was passionate in continuously honing his craft. His works are often true to life because either he had experienced this himself or he had deeply researched on the subject or theme. He never stopped learning and was such an avid reader. You could ask him almost anything from science to literature and history. When it comes to his art, he was confident because he studied his subjects very thoroughly. He was particularly strict with his lines, form, movement, and balance. You'll never see him compromise on this. This is also probably one of the reasons why his works are distinctly his own. I remember when I was in college and was finishing on a plate on human movement. I was working on this the whole night and eventually took a break and slept. The next day, there were like corrections and pencil lines everywhere, and I just had to repeat the whole thing all over again. He would normally take a break from sculpting after lunch, which is when he does most of his doodling. Using a black pen, he would draw his ideas on a small pad, and once he is satisfied with his subject, then he'd start transforming these sketches into three-dimensional sculptures. As a father, he was a disciplinarian, just as he was a disciplined and principled man. He taught us to value what we have and manage our time carefully, and this is because he came from a big family with very little resources. Our grandfather was a farmer, and our father helped plow the fields when he was young. For him, it was one of the most difficult tasks he had ever done in his life, and this made him respect our grandfather even more. This experience inspired him to pay tribute to the Men of Soil series, which featured fishermen, vendors, simple laborers, and farmers in action. These were what he grew up with. Penitensiya depicts the local tradition of sacrifice that has been practiced for decades in the Philippines. Although easy to recognize, this specifically in our local traditions could also be challenging. Working on something familiar demands certain expectations. Will the sculpture capture the essence of the subject being portrayed? Is it expressive enough? Does it exhibit the proper form? Is it moving or eliciting the right emotions from its viewers? More importantly, will the artwork connect to the viewers in the manner that it should? Thank you for joining me in this episode of Cultural Cache Online.